Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to episode 236 of the Sticks in the Six podcast. As always, I'm your host, Andrew Forbes, here with my co-host, Peter Baracchini. And Peter, we don't have too much Leaf content to talk about this week. Of course, some breaking news this morning. We'll get into that shortly. We've got some scenarios for the top 5 picks in the NHL Draft. But first, before we get into all of that, how you doing, my friend?
Doing great, man. Yeah, it's the perfect time to be recording when, Maple Leafs news breaks. As you could all read the title right now, we're going to get into the whole Craig Berube topic right there. But yeah, it's going well, and it has certainly been a whirlwind weekend, or not weekend, but week in, Leafland, really. I know we talked about like the draft lottery and everything that happened with the press conference, winning the lottery. Then there's a whole news about Matthews, if he's going to return at all in the fall kind of thing. And now there's Berube. It's just like, there's nothing, not like, it's just nonstop news after news after news with this team right now. Some good, some bad, some questionable. You don't know what you're getting right now, but in a sense, it's good that we're still talking about stuff, even when there's supposed to be nothing to really talk about, when it should be quiet. But knowing the Maple Leafs, they needed to turn things around, and they're always making news. So yeah, it's crazy.
When they're not in the playoffs, they like to make headlines still, and they find ways to do it, whether it's hiring Chayka and Sundin, whether it's, getting into the coaching carousel that happens in the NHL offseason. But yeah,
somehow winning the draft lottery.
Somehow, some way winning the draft lottery. We got Via Canada happy hump day, gents. And Gary, what happened, with a little sarcastic face there. We're gonna get into it in a sec here, Gary. We're gonna get into a sec, but I gotta start off because we've had a bit of a sad week here at the Forbes residence. Unfortunately, as you know, we kind of talk off screen, and we had to unfortunately put our little French bulldog down after 10 wonderful years with him. So I know I bring it up here on the podcast because a couple weeks back, we had somebody joining in on the TikTok live and asked who the snoring was in the background, wondering who was falling asleep during our show. And I noted that it was our pup, and it was shortly after that just took a turn and ended up driving an hour and a half to a vet medical. It was basically a hospital for dogs. Like they had like a neurology department. They had everything. And we found out our little guy had been littered with cancer and had been for some time. And unfortunately, we had to put him down. So it's been a sad time here. The kids are doing okay. My wife not so much, and me, it hits me when you come in late at night and you don't hear that snoring anymore. So unfortunately, he's gone, and it'll be a bit of a lonely household sometimes, but it's they become part of your family, right? He was our kid before we had kids, so it changes everything. But Via Canada, thank you. Appreciate the sympathies and onwards and upwards, guys. Onwards and upwards. We try to stay positive here. We keep our heads up and the glass half full. But anyway, we got some hockey to talk about. The playoffs are still in the heat of things. Carolina, again, sweeps their series. 2 very, very close series going on in the second round here with Buffalo and Montreal. A heck of a series going on there. Colorado can win their series tonight. But more importantly, we got the Leafs.
Yeah.
We got the Leafs, and
who cares about the playoffs?
Yeah, we got to open up with the breaking news this morning as it came out that Craig Berube has been let go by the Toronto Maple Leafs with 2 years remaining on his contract. So the Leafs are on the hook for that unless he's hired somewhere else. That said, John Chayka said it's a move that comes with the organizational's directional differetions. So they will be heading in a different direction in terms of how they play the game. I just saw a tweet actually before we jumped on the air here that Austin Matthews' his competition against I guess highly skilled competition or whatever
level comp, yeah.
Yeah, so it was 38% in his first 8 years With the last 2 years with Berube, it was up to about 48%. So that obviously changes the way that we've seen him play. From what I understand, there hasn't been a lot of conversation with Matthews yet. They have not met up as they planned, and that's just a scheduling difference. But the news is Berube's out. Now we wait on a coaching move from Chayka, Sundin, and the rest of the Leafs management. Your thoughts on Craig Berube and his time with the Maple Leafs?
It was one that needed to happen, unfortunately. I mean, you go from having one of the best seasons ever, winning the Atlantic Division, getting first, moving on to the second round, literally just one game away from moving on, although you had multiple chances to win it last year. But I think the defensive deficiencies that plagued this team last year, and we saw it at certain points too, where maybe was it sustainable, was it not? Maybe the offense kind of masked it a little bit. Same with the goaltending. It just didn't cut out. Even this year, you knew at the beginning of the season when they were blowing leads, not getting the right opportunities, being hemmed in their zone, you realized that it was going to be a recipe for disaster as the season went on, and it unfortunately did. It cost them a playoff spot. And it could be a multitude of mix of things, from roster construction, which we've complained about multiple times from Brad Treliving, the defense not being as mobile, not being fast, not being quick, not being young enough as the direction that other teams are going right now. And overall, maybe just Berube losing faith, or the players losing faith in Berube, or vice versa. Because how many times has Berube said, when they've had a poor outing, he's like, you go and talk to them, see why they didn't come to play, or why they got the result that they did. So it's one that needed to happen because they needed to change of direction and a change of voice. Then again, how many times can that happen with, the players that you have, especially the core that are supposed to lead this team? We have seen it in the past before. We have seen players get on track. So hopefully whoever comes in can get this team back on track. And with the vision that they have that mindset where the coach is going to be that player coach, but also play to their strengths as well. We've seen time and time again, having a player coach, having a defensive-minded coach, nothing in between. Hopefully whoever they get in needs to have that balance, because, this year was just absolutely abysmal. Even looking at the numbers last year, like I'm looking at a natural stat trick, the amount of shots against for Maple Leafs being a top 4 team in points last year, they were, if I believe correctly, 18th in shots for percentage, 49.27%, just below like league average. Their expected goals for last year had them all the way down at 48.52%, 23rd. And that's just last year. This year, that has gotten significantly worse in terms of their shots for, expected goals, you name it. Shots for percentage, they were second last, ahead of only Chicago, 44.66%. And expected goals way down at the bottom, 45.67%, 29th overall. So they were below league average last year, and they're way below league average this year. So you kind of get the sense that whether you're an analytics guy or not, you can even see on the ice that they were getting hemmed nonstop. They were getting outshot, outplayed, outmuscled. They were just very weak and fragile on the ice. So hopefully, with a new direction and a new focus coming in from management, hopefully they want to be get back to that puck possession roots, but still finding guys that can play a gritty style. As Matthews and Nylander alluded to, finding those kind of dog players that can grind it out and open things up for the skilled players. I think that's ideal, but a lot needs to happen in the near future. But this is the right spot for Chayka in trying to get a new voice and a new coach, and probably someone a little bit younger. We've seen other teams go a younger route and less experienced route, where, they've had little experience in the NHL as like maybe an assistant coach, but they've had a success in the AHL. That probably is the direction they're going to go, but who they're going to hire, that's going to be the main thing. But it needed to happen right away.
Yeah, you have to wonder too, like without the block shots from McCabe this season, last season was Chris Tanev that led the league, and those numbers play into it as well. I do think that they were trending in the wrong directions in terms of the way that they were playing. I do think that with the new less experienced management, they could go outside of the old boys club with coaching as well and try and
I'm
find
hoping that's the
somebody that's,
case. Yeah.
maybe they go the collegiate route. Jordan over here mentions David
David Carl.
Carl.
Yeah.
I'm not, again, David Carl's been asked many a times, and I'm not sure he wants to make that jump because he has such a great situation in the NCAA.
He's a University of Denver icon right now. I mean,
And heavily paid for it, right?
yeah.
Like, keep that in mind. Like, he gets a good premium for sticking around. But
Overall, I mean, David Carl is probably that one guy that's unconventional, young, and has a winning pedigree that you would want to have. I fully agree with that. Whether or not he wants to make that jump, that's still in his court, whether or not. And he did talk about how great Gavin McKenna is. So hopefully,
I was gonna say you get the opportunity to possibly coach Matthews and McKenna at the same time. It definitely changes your mentality a little bit. Vive Canada says, I don't believe Craig was the problem. I don't believe Matthews is a glue guy. Goes on to say, and this is an interesting conversation piece as well.
Yeah, and that's what I meant before too. Like, who's losing the room kind of thing.
Yeah,
Matthew,
but
like the team and the players or the coach.
He does go on to say as well, Matthews should have a spot reserved for Legends Row, but I think Chayka should trade him while the kettle is hot. I say that's an interesting point because I saw somebody raise the point regarding Marner as well. Had he stuck around, who cares if he had won a cup? And we've had that conversation too. Would he have landed himself on Legends Row at some point? I think the loyalty is a big thing for finding yourself onto that statue platform, right? Like, we got to remember, there's not going to be a lot of people added over the next many years to that platform, given what those players on it have done for the Maple Leafs organization. So, but what are your thoughts on the idea of trading Matthews? I know we talked about it.
Yeah.
When we get into the idea of like the top five and different scenarios, I brought one up in my most recent piece over at the Hockey Writers. The possibility of trading Matthews to, say, San Jose for the second overall pick, Sam Dickinson, and next year's first. Given that there's a relationship already there with Austin Matthews, Joe Thornton, who's in the organization, and of course Patrick Marleau in the organization.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be hard pressed to trade him right now, given how, there's all this changes in the organization. And I say let this season play out because he does, as we mentioned before many times, he does have 2 years left on his deal. I think if they get to a better spot and they make the playoffs this season coming up, then I think maybe you would want to hang on to him. But then I think you need to have that conversation mid-season, kind of like Vancouver did with Quinn Hughes, being like, hey, this is where we're at right now. This is where we're projected to go. We're slated to be this. You're in a playoff spot, or even at the tail end of last season, of next season. It doesn't have to be mid-season. If you have like a kind of like overview or review of what happened this season before, and then you have that talk with Matthews, this is where we're at. We still have faith in you. Do you want to be a part of this solution? Kind of like what happened with Mitch Marner previously, where, Dubas and everybody talked to Matthews and Nylander. They were a part of it, but Mitch Marner was a little bit hesitant or didn't want to commit. If Matthews still wants to commit after the end of next year and likes what he saw, then I don't think you should trade him. But at the same point, it depends on what he thinks. If he feels like it's still up in the air and you don't have that commitment, then you could say, hey, if we're not getting this reassurance, waive your no movement clause so we could try and get something and make you a little bit happier in that regard. I think it's a little bit too early right now. I say let the season play out, kind of like what Edmonton is or McDavid's going to be doing with Edmonton right now. Before we jump the gun on any trade, I think we should just play a patient, see what happens, and then we could take it from there if he isn't happy.
Yeah, Gary, like most, wants a little bit more commitment from this guy, and I don't disagree. I think there's a little bit of PTSD here from Mitch not committing prior to his last season of his contract. Obviously going in, not having conversations, and then jumping ship for Vegas. So I think that's kind of where a lot of that comes from, especially in Leafs Nation. I see a couple names coming up here in the chat as well. I see Carberry, obviously a guy that was with the Leafs organization at one point, now doing a great work with Washington. And then, of course, a suggestion from Jordan here to trade Matthews to Utah for Desnoyers, Hayton, Simashev, and a first. I've
I'd
seen
be all
names
over
like
that.
that. Yeah, I've seen names
I'd be
like
all over that. Even if you
trades
throw in
with.
TJ Ginla somehow.
Yeah, I've seen that kind of deal thrown out there. I've seen Tisha Ginla put in there instead of Hayton. But regardless, I'm on the boat of sitting back and seeing what happens. What happens through this offseason. You've got the opportunity to move him if he wants to be moved, and that's what people forget is that he holds the chips, right? Like he gets to decide if he wants to go and where he wants to go, and he's earned that right. We've talked about no movement clauses in the past, so I think that's important to note as well. I think it's also important to note like there's been a lot of misconceptions in the Toronto media this offseason, including Darren Dreger saying that that Craig Berube was sticking around, that there was expectation that he was going to be part of the organization moving forward. And then, of course, like CJ's report, and we talked about this a little bit, it's nothing against CJ, but the idea that, Austin Matthews is unsure of whether he's going to be at training camp is a complete misconception. Like, the fact is this guy's under contract for another 2 seasons. So at this point in time, unless something breaking happens, he's going to be at training camp and things are going to move forward. And I think that's gotten a lot of Leafs Nation worked up and frustrated with the idea that he may walk the same way that Mitch Marner walked. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's created a lot of noise and a lot of smoke where there's no fire yet.
And I wholeheartedly agree with that too. I mean, it creates a talking point, and yeah, there's that doubt because he's still weighing all of his options. And we talked about how his future was still unclear, and he didn't know what the future holded during his exit interview. I mean, that's fair to say. I mean, he needs to assess everything and take a step back. But in the same breath, this is only the first time. I get that they haven't had playoff success, but they have made the playoffs 8 out of the 9 years with Austin Matthews at the helm or leading this team. That's nothing to sneer at. It's not like it was only like 2 playoff appearances, 5 missed with all these like accolades during the regular season, but nothing to show for it. They made the playoffs. It's just they couldn't get over that hump, and they lacked that, that playoff mindset, that edge, that tenacity. So if I'm Austin Matthews or if I'm Chayka and Sandin going to Matthews, we're still going to present that to him. With you at the helm or being a big part of this team, we still made the playoffs. Not we with Chayka and Sandin, but you made the playoffs previously, whether the team was flawed or not. You helped them get to that point. And with you as the captain, we're relying on you to help get us back there, get us a championship, and be the kind of voice in the locker room that we need. That veteran leadership presence. And I do believe that there's another level to him in terms of being a leader on and off the ice, in terms of his vocal presence, being a little bit more, not necessarily upfront with his comments, but a little bit more, analytical. Because there were times this year where maybe he was critical. Maybe sometimes he wasn't when he should have been. But I think this year, after what happened last one, I would hope that there's a sense of a fire in him, from everybody else, that this was absolutely unacceptable. And he said he took ownership. We heard that in the exit interview, but now it's time for you to act on it. And as a captain, everyone's going to be relying on you. So again, if I'm Sandin and Chayka, you're going to reassure him that you're an important and integral part of this team. We want to see it still.
Great point by Gary, and we talked about this before we went live here. How much of this is media driven? And I responded here in the comments. I think it's 85% media driven.
Most of it, yeah.
I think the fact that they haven't met is causing people concern, but I don't think there's much concern there, right? Like This is a guy, he goes home, he trains in the summer. Chayka's get all this stuff that's going on with Chayka. He's just getting into the office, and now like, just because they haven't been able to meet in the first week and a half, everyone's in full panic mode.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of that is driven by, the headlines and the Steve Simmons of the world who, are looking to create havoc and create chaos. And, Leafs Nation, let's be honest. We can all agree that we vibe off of chaos. That's what we live. That's what we live in on a regular basis. But,
just want to chime in here. Anadua just recently made a quote, or, about an hour or so ago during the Chayka press conference. about the meeting with Sandin. We've had conversations. I think it was important for me to get a good lay of the land in terms of internal workings and what we had in place here. Wanted to make sure that we had all the knowledge we could possibly have, so when we sit down, we can have the best discussion. So when that is the right assessment in order to get ahead of everything, you want to make sure you have everything in place before you go into that meeting. So that to me is the right step in the right direction. So now you have something in place. You're going to present to Matthew, new coach, new vision, new mindset, new atmosphere. What do you think of it?
Yeah, and CJ also quoted Chaykin saying, "We'll have a thorough process. It'll be a wide search. We'll take our time, try to get it right. It's the most critical decision as the general manager." Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to note, like, as important as having coach is, to go through the draft, to go through the combine, to go through that process, you don't necessarily need to have that coach in place, and I think that makes a huge difference. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be, I hope they take their time with this. I hope they don't just jump on board. I think I speak for a lot of people when I say like, it would have been nice to get like a guy like Pete DeBoer. That said, he's now unavailable, and I think it's at that point where you got to take your time and kind of analyze how these coaches are gonna ice these players on a night to night basis, and are they going to do it right? Like Jordan in the comments here noted our top 6. I would even talk about, we've talked about bringing Scott Lawton back in the offseason. He hasn't re-signed yet. Yeah. Why not bring back a Scott Lawton and put him at the 2C, give him that opportunity to play up in the middle of the lineup with a Nyes and a Nylander, and move John Tavares to the third line as a center. Mm-hmm. There's possibilities here, right? And that's the important point right now, is that there's possibilities. Craig Berube, albeit not his fault that the team suffered this season, didn't make the changes that needed to be made to make this organization successful down the stretch. Yeah. And that's where he, unfortunately he's got to atone for that, because at the end of the day, they've moved some key players in Lawton, McMahon, and Nick Waugh. They moved those guys. It didn't create any more success for this organization, aside from winning the draft lottery, which is pure luck. And now you're getting a young kid in, whether it be Stenberg, whether it be McKenna, whether it be, hell, we can go Chase Reed if you really want to go Chase Reed, number one. Yeah. And you're going to need a coach in there that's willing to put that development and put that time in. And we've talked about the development of this organization. It has not been good over the last few years. Now is the time that you need to make the change, and maybe that's bringing in a young coach who doesn't have the NHL experience, but has the experience with this younger generation, where you do need to cater to them a little bit more than the old school mentality. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an interesting avenue to recognize as well.
And as everyone's like talking about potential options out there, I know that, everyone is probably going to look at the top ones as Bruce Cassidy, but if he's that one guy that's a little bit older and you want to go a younger direction, it's going to be interesting to see who they actually go for. Yeah, you could go Manny Malhotra, who hasn't really had coaching experience, but I feel like he's the top guy for Vancouver right now. I feel like that's going to be the situation where he's going to be their guy. And I'm just going to throw out some names that I really could be under the radar. I'm going to look at Pratt from Colorado, Daniels from Carolina as well, because they're assistant coaches there, but they have had good success in helping build that team up. So I think if there's an opportunity for them to become head coaches, they have the experience in working under guys like Rod Brindamore and Jared Bednar to get their vote of confidence. And one other underrated name, and this is McCluskey online, who's very got a lot of good takes in terms of the Maple Leafs and everything like that. Todd Nelson from the Pittsburgh Penguins, back-to-back Hershey champions in 22, 23, 23, 24, lost in the second round. And basically at every level I'm looking at right now, he's basically had a winning record, made playoffs, lost in either mid to late round, or won a championship as well. If you go to HockeyDB and look at his coaching record and resume, be it at UHL, especially the AHL, he's got a lot of success there.
Yeah, I think that's the route we have to go here, right? Like Gary's mentioning Cassidy and Laviolette as guys with short shelf lives. I think that's been the case with a lot of these recycled coaches, right? And that's it goes back to this conversation. You want unconventional, but it goes back to the conversation of this young generation too, and you can't coach them the way that you did even 10 years ago. It's a different group, it's a different mentality. The way they approach things is entirely different as well. On top of that, Gary mentions Scott. I mentioned Scott Lawton. He played at 4C here in Toronto when he was here, and how it was unacceptable for Berube. And that's why I mentioned giving him those 2C minutes. This is a guy who can score. This is a guy who can put up points. This is a guy who can get feisty. You put him on a line,
clapper on a breakaway and score. Like you rarely see that.
Yeah, you put him on a line with a Matthew Nyes. All of a sudden, you've got two solid power forwards that can put up decent numbers, right? But yeah, it's interesting. It's the way this team's gonna have to go. Like I said, I hope they take the time to look at it. I hope they take the time to analyze their options, and they give somebody an opportunity that maybe is off the board a little bit. You know what I mean? Like we heard Chayka as one of the later names in the GM search. All of a sudden they go Chayka, right? So, yeah, Jordan, I agree. You want a David Carl type of coach that can come in here and work with these young guys and develop these young guys. Because let's face it, that's where the Leafs have been lacking for a long time. You've been fortunate in getting guys like Matthew Nyes who didn't really need much development in terms of what they were able to do on the ice. And you're going to get another guy at number one who, regardless of who you choose, that's going to be able to do that as well. But they need to be able to hone in their expertise in their game and make that transition to the NHL. You need a coach who's able to do that. And I think that's what we need to see here in Maple Leaf land.
Just one other point, too. I know this is kind of like to tie it. Actually, you know what? Because we're going to talk about draft scenarios and one of them involved the San Jose Sharks, I'm going to save it for that. I was going to chime in, but I'm actually going to save it.
All right, before we move on here real quick, Jordan asked the question, would you guys move on from Nyes?
I have had this discussion many times, both in and out of personal life or whatever. It is a tough choice. It all depends on if you're willing to trade him for a top mobile puck moving defender. Absolutely. But seeing what he did this year and he was injured, what he did the year before as a rookie, being a power forward, being physical, being the guy to go into the corners, you could find another Matthew Nyes again in the draft and build them up. But he is extremely valuable to you right now, and you don't want to lose that and then rebuild that afterwards because you already got that tenacity and that physicality in there. If you're trading him for a specific positional need and he could come in and make a difference right now, like that right shot defender, absolutely. But right now, I'd probably hang on to him.
He's a culture changer and in captain material. I tend to agree. And here's the thing with Matthew Nyes. I'm not going to sit here and say no, I would never trade him. If the right offer came around, and it'd have to be pretty darn good. But I at this point in time, he's a guy that I wouldn't consider moving because I think what he brings to the organization. And remember, last season he played most of the year hurt and still put up the numbers he did.
Yeah,
you don't move on from a guy that's willing to go out there on a night to night basis and play his ass off while dealing with injuries. Gary says Nyes, Cow, and have to be off the table. They are the future. I agree. Right now, you're in a situation where you're building. You cannot trade away those assets, and those are the mistakes that the Leafs have made in the past. I think you need to find a way to hold on to them. So, in saying that, Jordan, to respond to your, would you trade him for first and Nemec or Yakimchuk? At this point, no. But again, like I've been wrong before, so let's just leave it at that.
I feel like Nemec has had good moments in the NHL, but he hasn't really popped off yet. I wouldn't do that necessarily 1-for-1, but if Nemec is involved and New Jersey's adding maybe another piece in there, whether it be up front or on the back end, I would totally be willing to listen to that.
Gary says the Leafs prospect pool is dry. I say the Leafs prospect pool is empty right now, and it's sitting in the middle of a skate park, and people are riding around on their skateboards. That's where the Leafs prospect pool is at this point. Anyways, before we move on to some possible top 5 scenarios, just a quick word from our sponsors over at DraftKings Sportsbook. The Stanley Cup playoffs are here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, has a new customer offer. Bet player props, bet live, from the opening faceoff to the final horn. Every moment matters. New DraftKings customers bet just $5 and you'll get $100 in bonus bets instantly.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-MY-RESET. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 and over in most states. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. Limited time offer.
All right, so we're talking draft scenarios. We're talking top 5 draft scenarios. I don't know if we mentioned this. We mentioned it a little bit. At the Hockey Writers, I'm doing multiple draft scenarios for the top 5 picks. So I've done 2 so far. First one, everyone kept their picks. Leafs take McKenna first overall. You see Stenberg drop down to 4. Malhotra goes at 3 to the Vancouver Canucks, who have their eye on Manny as a potential fill-in in the coaching staff as well. He's coaching for their AHL affiliate right now, so it would make sense to see Malhotra go at that point. I've got San Jose taking Chase Reed because, I mean, you've got Mook Medulin, you've got Sam Dickinson, but why wouldn't you want to add Chase Reed to that already impressive organization? And then, of course, number 5, I think I went Carson Carroll's number 5 in that first scenario. The second scenario, I mentioned it a little bit here. I had the Leafs trading Matthews to San Jose for the second overall pick as well. They went McKenna. They went Chase Reed. Ivar Stenberg went 3. And then I think I went on from there, Malhotra and what have you. So, with that in mind, how do you see this going? I know it's an open-ended question, but let's go pick for pick right now. Let's go pick for pick top 5 because this can go a whole number of ways. Like this is like looking at the number pi and just knowing it's never going to stop, right? It's just the options are continuous. The options are infinite. So with that said, what we're going to do here is we'll go through each of the top 5 picks and we'll do our primary pick and then a scenario that could come of that pick, okay? So, Leafs hold the first overall pick. What are you taking?
I am taking Gavin McKenna. I think that's kind of the no-brainer, but then again, I have said, and I wrote a piece about how Gavin McKenna is the pick, but you shouldn't count out Ivar Stenberg. Given what he did against senior competition, a lot of pro qualities ready, but he has his weaknesses as well, just like McKenna, and they could both impact the game and be successful in their own right. I feel like the Maple Leafs needed that a little bit more skill because you replace that with what you lost with Marner, and it could allow Matthews to open up. And knowing how patient and deceptive McKenna can be to open up those passing lanes, that just makes a whole lot of sense for me. I would love Ivar Stenberg. I think he would be fantastic, but it's got to be McKenna.
So I'm going to go with you as well. Right now, if you're looking at betting sites, I believe he's minus 470 to go first overall. Normally, when it's a unanimous number 1, they're about minus 2,000. So right now, there is still some question marks of whether Gavin McKenna goes first overall. That said, call it just coincidence. McKenna followed Matthews. Matthews followed McKenna on Instagram. So there's already a building connection. I've seen that a lot of teams are shying away from McKenna at first overall because they believe that if he doesn't have a number 1 center, that he doesn't have the same game and explosiveness.
Have one.
But the Leafs do not have that problem. And I think that's important to note. I think the Leafs have to look at that as a potential. And given the possibility with Matthews, even if you were to leave, all of a sudden you've got a top line winger, and you can build off of that. So you've still got a franchise player in Gavin McKenna. I say Gavin McKenna. Now, in saying that, if Gavin McKenna was not the guy for the Maple Leafs at number 1. What is another option here? What kind of scenario do you see for the Leafs at number 1?
Just for like picking, or are we going to go crazy and throw in potential trade opportunities?
I say if you're sitting in the GM chair right now and you're told McKenna's not the guy for you, what is your backup scenario? It could be a trade. You could be moving the first overall pick. Maybe you go off the board with somebody else. What are you seeing in the number 1 slot?
2 scenarios. One, I feel like Ivar Stenberg would be the next best forward to be taken. Like I said, I think he has a lot of pro-ready qualities, and he has a motor, and he's got that mindset. He can do whatever it takes. He can battle. He can do anything along the boards, down low. He can attack the middle very well. He's got a decent shot as well. I feel like he's a little bit more well-rounded Gavin McKenna, where maybe he won't. Gavin McKenna may be projected to be at least 80-plus points, where maybe Stenberg could get you 65, 75, but have a sounder two-way game. I feel like that's still up in the Maple Leafs realm. I mean, again, not to say that Sundin is going to have a whole lot of say too, but, we've seen what happens with a team like Vancouver where they love their Swedes. The Maple Leafs, they've already taken William Nylander early on as an 8th overall pick. Stenberg is right there. Yeah, OEL said he's already talked with Stenberg as well, jokingly trying to recruit him as well. So there's that. I think that while he isn't the highest ceiling player, he definitely has a high floor, and he still has a lot of potential to be a solid, maybe not top line, but a very solid top 6 winger that could do a lot of things. He can play up and down, not necessarily up and down the lineup, but all situations. We saw what he did at the World Juniors. We saw what he did against men against Sweden. I feel like he's right there for the taking, and you got to take on the player that's ready to make that jump. And then again, if you don't feel like you want either of those and you want a D-man, you trade down to still within that top 5. You still get a top 5 pick, but add another first-round pick. Try to find a team that has that either this year or next year. So then that way you get another first, whether it be in 2026 or 2027, but you still get an impact defender. I still feel like the defenders maybe are at least a minimum 2 years away, depending on who you take. I feel like there could be a lot more incentive to take a Chase Reed or a Carson Karros who could be here sooner rather than later. Then again, you don't want to rush defensive prospects, but if they're ready, I feel like those 2 guys are the next best ones to make that jump quicker. I do like Keaton Verhoff, but he's 17. He's got a lot of room to grow, so you could take that gamble, and hopefully maybe 5 years down the line, he's ready to make that jump, and he's going to be ready regardless. But yeah, if it's not Stenberg, then you definitely trade down and try and recruit more asset or try to gain more assets, but also add in pieces and players that could be inserted into the lineup right now. And I think that's the second scenario that you had. And I'm going to throw this out there too. I believe you had Sam Dickinson, Chase Reed in the 2nd overall. I'm going to go one step further for Matthews. I'm asking for Michael Misa. I'm asking for that 2nd. And we talked about David Carl earlier in the show, University of Denver. He had Eric Polkamp on his roster as a top pairing defender that he could rely on, get points, and be a veteran presence. I know he's later on in his career, but he relied on him heavily. I wonder if you could try to take him. You still fill out that right side. You get a mobile 2-way defender in Polkamp. You get an offensive 2-way defender in Chase Reed, but you get that top line center still in Michael Misa.
Yeah, no, okay. So I'm gonna sit on the first and say that there's no way that Che can come in here and trade the first. There's absolutely.
That's if you're
no
getting
way.
crazy, yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane for him. You're basically signing your pink slip if you come in here and trade the first. I do say that if McKenna is not the guy that you want to go with, Ivar Stenberg is definitely a guy that you go with. I'm glad you mentioned OEL. I'm glad you mentioned Nylander. I'm glad you mentioned Sundin. I think the other thing to note is too, like, he's already played against men, and the game's going to transition a little bit easier for him. He does play mature. I know the comments here are wondering if he's got the personality to maintain composure in Toronto media.
I don't think he cares.
I don't think he's got an issue with that.
Yeah.
I don't think McKenna's going to have an issue with that. So that's kind of the nice part about both of those. But I do see Ivar Stenberg as the next guy. And you'll see in my third scenario, that's where the Leafs go with number one. In saying that, you already brought up the second overall pick. If San Jose were not to trade the second overall pick, and there's potential that they could, based on the fact that this organization is looking very, very strong, should be making a few runs, should be a perennial contender over the next many years. They have the potential to really build that even more with the second overall pick. But if they were not to trade it, I say they go Chase. I say they go Chase Reed. I think they need that extra defender, that top of the line defender. What is your take on the possibility of San Jose skipping over Ivar Stenberg, who's a great option at number 2, and potentially going with a Chase Reed?
I feel like now that kind of like essentially the best players off the board right then and there, skill wise. When you look at what the Sharks need, they don't need another forward. They don't need Ivar Stenberg. You look at their depth chart forward wise, and they are deep as all hell. Like, I mean, we talk about the players that are in the lineup right now. We talk about Will Smith. They added Colin Graff. I mean, Misa as well, who could play center and wing as well. I think he could be a little bit suited on the wing as well, too, depending on how, whatever direction everybody wants to go. But you have those guys. You already have William Eklund. You already have Will Smith. You have Igor Chernishev. You have Kasper Haltinen coming up. You have Carson Wentz, who just signed his ZLC as well. Mm-hmm. You have Quentin Musty. You have a lot of guys right there, and a lot of top 6 potential guys that may get moved down or moved out as well. You got to take a D-man. You need help not necessarily need help on the right side, but like I mentioned, you have Eric Polkomp, but you need a little bit more of a dynamic puck mover, and that's where Chase Reed comes in. You already have Leo Wallenius. You already have Sam Dickinson on the left side. You add Chase Reed, there's a solid top 4 right there. I think that's the ideal scenario where you're already deep up front, but you also become deeper on defense as well. And I also didn't even mention Shakir Mukhamadullin, Luca Cagnoni, Nolan Allen, a lot of other guys on their roster or in their prospect pool as well, where maybe some guys aren't just going to work out. But I feel like Chase Reed is definitely going to be that guy that could be a difference maker for them.
All right, so number 3, things get interesting. If Ivar Stenberg is in fact still on the board, you've also got Caleb Malhotra and the connection that he has to the Vancouver Canucks. The Vancouver Canucks dropped from the number 1 seed all the way down to number 3. If you're the Vancouver Canucks, and possibly Shane Doan at this point, we don't know because he could be the GM. Who you taking at number 3?
So in my mock draft for the Hockey Raiders, I took Caleb Malhotra because up the middle, I know you already have like Marco Rossi. You already have like Elias Pettersson right now, but to me, Braden Coots and Caleb Malhotra is like the ultimate 2-way centerman combo that you can have up the middle already. And in the like prospect corner that we did for our mock draft, still on THW prospect corner, I took Ivar Stenberg. So I've been flip-flopping back and forth between Caleb Malhotra and Ivar Stenberg because I feel like Vancouver could use both of those guys. I feel like Vancouver has enough wingers that they could bypass Stenberg and maybe add a little bit more depth up the middle of Malhotra. But I think Stenberg makes him a little bit deeper on the wing as well. And that's not to say that one is going to be better than the other. I still think highly of Caleb Malhotra. I wrote his profile. I've seen him multiple times. I think he has the potential. Everyone is saying that he most likely is going to be a second-line center. I feel like with over time, he can get to a number 1 center spot. Mm-hmm. Very solid, very reliable. Everyone talks about maybe his skating isn't the best. At the times that I've seen him fly out there and go end-to-end on rushes, maintain possession. It's absolutely insane what he can do. Stenberg, on the other hand, maybe lacks that explosiveness that Malhotra has, but still impactful and can change the tide of a game. So to me, this is a bit of a toss-up, and this is where it goes because I've already selected one player in one mock and then another in the other. So to me, you can't go wrong with either or. I think both of them will be foundational pieces for them regardless.
I'm on the same boat because on one scenario, I did take Malhotra because of the connection and because of what he offers as a guy up the middle. On the other side, on the second scenario, I did put Stenberg. My true heart goes with I think if you pass up a guy like Stenberg, you're insane. And that's not a knock on Malhotra. I think Malhotra is an incredible player. I think he's going to bring a lot to whatever team he goes to. But I think right now, to have a guy of that impact, to have a guy that's already there, already playing with men, and having the success that he had, I think it's going to be crazy if Vancouver passes on Stenberg if he falls to 3. So, for me, they go Stenberg, but I'm like you. I think they could go either way. And it'd be insane to think that they made the wrong pick.
Yeah,
I think Malhotra brings a different set of skills to the Vancouver Canucks, and obviously, like I said, with the connection there, the possibility that Manny Malhotra could come up and be a coach at some point. It's just.
I was about to say, whoever becomes a head coach, if it's Manny, then I think we already know what this is. It's going to be, and
it's becoming quite the storyline for this organization as well, but. At the end of the day, the Canucks need to go with what's best for the organization because this is a team that has not done well, and they need to find a way to revitalize, like Gary says, revitalize PD, but also, pick this franchise up off the ground and start heading back in the right direction. Now that the Sedins are in there as well, again, that Swedish connection, it makes me think Stenberg might be the guy that goes to Vancouver. With that said. Then you've got the Chicago Blackhawks. And I think you and I are going to both be on the same page here, so we don't need to get too deep into it. But if Malhotra goes 3rd, I think it's a no-doubter Stenberg goes 4.
Yeah.
If Stenberg goes 3, I think it'd be insane for them not to go Malhotra at 4. So that's where I sit. They could go with a defenseman. I just don't see them going that route. I do think Keaton Veerhoff for most has fallen outside the top 5, unfortunately. But I think that's not a note on his play. That's just the caliber of skill that's kind of been produced over the last calendar year. And for me, if it's a toss up, they're going to pick based on what happens at number 3.
I agree. I feel like Stenberg is the obvious choice. But in the event that maybe I feel like Chicago may not take the center. And I think I'm not going to say necessarily here, and I'm kind of on the train where do not count out Viggo Bjork in making the top 5. I think that this guy has really popped off in the second half that maybe he could squeak his way somewhere, whether it's in that 5 spot or even the 4. I think that if Chicago doesn't take Stenberg as a winger and they let Malhotra drop, I think maybe you could see Bjork get in there because if you don't want a top line of Stenberg, Bedard, and or Frondell, then Bjork, Bedard, Frondell is going to be just as exciting and just as fun. I mean, again, we're going to get a glimpse of Viggo more so at the it's the World Hockey Championship because he excelled at the World Juniors. There was that overtime in the semifinals where he was just wanting to win the game and putting the game on his stick every single time. Overtime, shootout, you name it. He's a buzzsaw. This guy battles hard and he's got the skill set to make anybody look foolish. And that being said, I do think that if Malhotra is already gone, I think they take Stenberg. But if Malhotra is available, I think they go Viggo Bjork, and I think Bjork can make his way into the top 5.
Okay, perfect. I've got in my second scenario, I have Viggo Bjork going 5th overall to New York. I do also in the first scenario have Carson Karels going 5th overall to New York. Again, the Rangers right now for me are such a question mark because they need everything. They need everything. Yeah. They don't have anything left in the tank. And I could see them going Bjork because of what he can create offensively, but Karels also offers offensive production with a physicality that he can bring
He's
to
a
the
multi-tool
organization as
defender.
well.
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting because I saw it brought up in the comments here as well. If Fox were to get moved, and that would open the door a little bit more. Jordan says Carroll's is going to Calgary. That wouldn't be a bad place for him either,
That's
especially
a perfect place.
That organization.
Him and Perek as the top pairing for the future. I think that's solid.
Yeah, I like that. That's actually a great call. Carroll's is a Heiskanen Sanderson 2.0. Yeah, I mean, I think he's more. He's got the Heiskanen offense with a little bit of more chippiness like Sanderson.
I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah.
He's got the Sanderson chippiness. That's
a great comparison. But anyways, I think the point of this was that the options are endless for what's going to happen in the top 5, and I think that's very important to note. If you haven't already, make sure you drop your comments in the comment section. Let us know what you think is going to happen in the top 5. Outside of that, Peter, I'm going to have a few more pieces coming out with my top 5 scenarios over at the Hockey Raiders. We went a little longer than I think we were thinking here, but before we close it out here, you got anything else you want to share with the viewers?
No, got a couple prospect profiles coming out too. One on a recent OHL champion defender, Alexander Bilecki. Really keep an eye on him. I feel like this could be not necessarily a diamond in the rough defender, but a guy with a lot of potential and upside that he's not getting right now, considering how deep he is on the roster for the Rangers. But he's on board for a Memorial Cup right now. He's going for the league championship, or not necessarily league championship, but CHL championship right now. And one other piece in the works too. I already talked about the first round selection, but I also got potential options for the second round pick should the Maple Leafs keep it if they don't move on from it.
I love it. So make sure you check us both out over at thehockeyraiders.com. And otherwise, guys, make sure you check out the Hockey Podcast Network. A lot of great hockey shows. DraftKings Sportsbook sponsors this fantastic show as well. Make sure you check out the show description for BioSteel promo codes as well as SeatGeek promo codes. Until next week, guys, it's going to be a lot of fun. The Leafs are making headlines. Playoffs are still going. And, we got episode 237 next Wednesday. Until then, that's all we got for this week. Here for Peter and myself, we leave you with Alex Hobson and his hit 25.